It started like any other day on a bustling Hollywood set, bright lights glaring, cameras rolling, and the hum of anticipation filling the air. But nothing about that day was ordinary. Imagine stepping onto a set expecting collaboration, excitement, the thrill of creating art with people you respect, only to realize that one presence, someone the entire world admired, was quietly tearing it all apart. That someone, in this story, was Meghan Markle. The buzz on social media about royal charm and poise suddenly collided with behind-the-scenes whispers of diva behavior, and the collision was catastrophic. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. The first whispers came from the crew. At first, they were subtle, almost joking. "She's particular," someone muttered, glancing nervously at the star who, according to insiders, was already making demands that went beyond scripts or schedules. But these whispers quickly evolved into full-blown anxiety. And then Lily Collins, one of the leading co-stars of Close Personal Friends, finally spoke. And what she revealed shocked everyone who had assumed that Meghan Markle, the Duchess turned Hollywood royalty, could do no wrong. Picture the scene. The cast gathered in the sun-drenched courtyard of Amazon MGM Studios, a place normally brimming with laughter, coffee runs, and the smell of fresh scripts. Cameras were being set up, sound technicians were double-checking mics, and makeup artists flitted around like busy bees. Everyone was ready to begin, but there was a tension in the air, subtle but palpable, as if the room itself was bracing for impact. The moment Meghan Markle stepped onto the set, a ripple of unease passed through the group. Faces that had been smiling moments earlier turned tight, eyes darting toward one another for unspoken confirmation. Were we really about to do this? Lily Collins noticed it immediately. She had worked with Hollywood stars before. She had seen tantrums, diva moments, and petty conflicts, but this was different. There was a precision to Meghan's approach that felt calculated, as though every move, every word, and every glance was designed to assert dominance. And the co-stars felt it. The crew felt it. Even seasoned producers, hardened by decades of navigating celebrity egos, felt it. It wasn't just her presence, it was her method. Reports from set insiders reveal that Meghan would arrive late, sometimes by hours, often with a carefully curated entourage of assistants who seemed to anticipate her every need before anyone else could even approach. If a prop was not exactly as she envisioned it, if a line read differently than she liked, the air shifted. The atmosphere, once buzzing with creative energy, morphed into one of tension and fear. People whispered in corners, wondering how they were going to survive an entire shoot under these conditions. But what makes this story explosive isn't just that she was difficult. It's that Lily Collins, a co-star widely admired for her professionalism and grace, described the experience as nothing short of a nightmare. According to Lily, Meghan Markle's behavior created friction with nearly every member of the cast. There was a pattern. Minor disagreements over creative choices would escalate. Private comments would be misconstrued and amplified, and even the simplest interactions, rehearsing lines, sharing a lunch break, became battlegrounds. Imagine rehearsing a scene where emotional vulnerability is key, where actors must trust one another to deliver authentic performances. Now imagine trying to do that while one member of the cast is so unpredictable, so volatile, that no one feels safe to improvise, to express, or to make a mistake. Lily Collins recounted moments where cast members would hesitate to speak, fearing that any small misstep might draw criticism. The chemistry that a set like this depends on, trust, collaboration, empathy, was being eroded day by day. And yet, there was a public facade. Cameras rolled, press statements were issued, and social media was flooded with the usual polished promotional material. Meghan Markle, in every Instagram post and promotional interview, appeared calm, composed, even charming. The contrast between the public persona and private behavior created an almost surreal dichotomy. How could someone so beloved, so scrutinized, simultaneously wield charm and chaos with such precision? The tension extended beyond interpersonal conflicts. Sources claim that production schedules were disrupted, scenes delayed, and technical staff under extraordinary pressure. On one particular day, a major scene involving multiple cast members nearly fell apart entirely. According to crew reports, Disagreements over blocking, the positioning of actors for camera shots, turned into heated arguments, and the director had to intervene multiple times. By lunch, morale had plummeted. And yet, Meghan, it seemed, remained entirely unbothered, moving through the set as though she were unaware, or perhaps intentionally ignoring, the storm she had created. Now, let's pause for a moment and consider this. Meghan Markle is not just any Hollywood actress. She is a figure who has navigated the glare of royal scrutiny, political commentary, and global media attention. She knows how to control narratives. She knows how to project charm when needed. That's precisely why the revelations from Lily Collins and the set crew are so shocking. We are not talking about a novice learning her craft, but a seasoned public figure whose private conduct reportedly contradicted everything the world had come to expect. But what does this mean for the co-stars? For Lily Collins, it meant navigating a minefield of social and professional challenges. Imagine rehearsing a delicate, emotional scene only to feel undermined by someone whose primary concern seemed to be asserting dominance rather than collaboration. Imagine the mental strain, the emotional toll, and the silent question that lingered in every corner of the set. How do you survive working with someone so unpredictable without compromising your own professionalism? And then there's the broader question, one that reaches beyond the confines of the studio lot. What does this reveal about the culture of celebrity, entitlement, and the collision between Hollywood and royalty? How does someone reconcile the expectations of public adoration with private behavior that reportedly alienates colleagues? These are not just anecdotes. They are reflections of a larger pattern that continues to capture the fascination, outrage, and curiosity of audiences worldwide. By now, you might be asking yourself, did anyone confront her? Did anyone stand up? According to multiple insider sources, yes, but the confrontations were often brief, discreet, and carefully mediated. The hierarchy of power on a major film set makes open conflict risky, particularly with someone of Meghan Markle's stature. Crew members and co-stars alike had to navigate this delicate balance, trying to preserve professionalism while enduring moments of outright diva behavior. And then there's Lily Collins' perspective. The most revealing of all. Her account does not just paint a picture of minor disruptions. It describes a pervasive, consistent pattern of behavior that affected the entire atmosphere on set. From missed cues to silent treatments, from private complaints to public statements, the tension was tangible. And yet, despite this, the filming continued, the cameras rolled, and the world remained largely unaware of the storm brewing behind the scenes. Now, here's a question for you, the viewer. How far would you go to maintain professionalism in the face of relentless pressure from someone in a position of influence? What choices would you make if every interaction risked conflict, every mistake risked public scrutiny, and every moment demanded composure? Lily Collins' revelations give us a glimpse into these impossible dilemmas, and they raise questions that go beyond one set, one film, or one celebrity. By the end of this story, you will hear details that are shocking, contradictory, and sometimes unbelievable. You'll learn about conflicts that escalated in ways no one expected, about private moments captured in text and anecdote, and about the subtle, but powerful, ways a single individual can influence an entire production. But perhaps the most compelling aspect of this expose is the human element, the fear, the frustration, the silent resilience of those who endured these moments, day after day. And just when you think the story has reached its peak, when the drama seems impossible to escalate further, there is a moment that nobody saw coming. A scene, a confrontation, a revelation that will change everything you thought you knew about the making of close personal friends. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. What does it feel like when an entire set, buzzing with anticipation, suddenly freezes the moment someone steps onto it? That was day one on the set of Close Personal Friends. Cameras were lined up, crew members were adjusting lights, and the cast was rehearsing their lines for the first time. Everyone expected excitement, collaboration, maybe a little nerves, the usual first-day jitters. No one expected chaos. And then Meghan Markle arrived. It started subtly. A late entrance, accompanied by assistants who seemed to anticipate her every move. Makeup touched up before she even reached her mark. Hair perfectly coiffed, outfit carefully curated, and a quiet but unmistakable aura that demanded attention. On paper, This should have been effortless grace, a moment of charm. In reality, it sent a ripple of unease through the cast and crew. Eyes flicked nervously, whispers started, and the mood shifted from anticipation to tension. Lily Collins noticed it immediately. She had walked onto many sets in her career, but this was different. There was a precision in Meghan's demeanor, a calculated way of moving through the space, asserting presence without saying much. One moment she would smile at someone, the next a subtle look of disapproval. The cast felt it, the crew felt it, and even the director felt it, a quiet but unmistakable disruption of energy. The first incident came during a scene that was supposed to be straightforward. A dialogue-heavy moment between Lily and Meghan was meant to establish character tension, nothing more. But what should have been a collaborative rehearsal turned into a microcosm of larger conflicts to come. Meghan stopped mid-line, looked directly at Lily, and said, with a carefully measured tone, "I think that doesn't sound authentic. We should rewrite it." Pause. The room froze. Directors, assistants, and co-stars all exchanged nervous glances. Rewriting a script on the fly is not unusual, but the delivery made it clear. It was less about collaboration and more about control. The energy shifted. Lily, known for her calm professionalism, tried to stay composed, but even she could feel the undercurrent of tension. The rest of the cast began questioning themselves silently. Was it them? Was it the direction? Or was this just the beginning of something bigger? And it was. Throughout that morning, minor disruptions became routine. Props weren't positioned correctly according to Meghan's vision. Lighting adjustments were questioned. Lines were repeated, not for rehearsal, but because someone had allegedly delivered them wrong. Crew members, seasoned professionals who had weathered difficult stars before, began keeping mental notes, whispering quietly in corners, wondering if they were about to survive this first day without a full-blown meltdown. Lunch offered no relief. Meghan's team reportedly reserved a separate space, insisting on a curated menu and quiet, uninterrupted time. Cast members and crew ate elsewhere, murmuring about her demands. The energy in the studio was fractured. What should have been camaraderie turned into silent observation. People were watching every movement, anticipating the next disruption, measuring their words carefully. By mid-afternoon, tensions escalated further. A scene involving multiple co-stars was halted not by a mistake in performance, but because Meghan allegedly disagreed with the blocking, the positioning of actors in the scene. Arguments erupted quietly but heatedly. Directors intervened, trying to mediate. The production team scrambled, trying to adjust schedules. For anyone outside the set, it would have looked like a normal day of filming. But for those inside, it felt like navigating a minefield. Every decision, every glance, every word had to be measured carefully. Lily Collins later described the day as surreal. "You're trained to stay professional," she said. "But it's impossible when the air is constantly charged with uncertainty. You don't know when you might be the next target, and that fear makes everyone tense." The emotional strain was tangible. The cast, who were supposed to be collaborating, were constantly on edge. Every line, every gesture, became an opportunity for scrutiny. What makes this even more astonishing is how public perception completely contradicts what was happening behind the scenes. Meghan Markle's public image, graceful, poised, polished, is at odds with what crew and co-stars described. On camera, she delivered every scene with charm and perfection. Off camera, the tension was palpable. It's a paradox that confounded everyone. How can someone perform flawlessly under the cameras while reportedly creating chaos behind the scenes? Then came the pivotal moment, the first official confrontation. It was minor in scale, but monumental in impact. During a rehearsal, a line delivery that Meghan didn't like sparked a private argument with the director. Voices were low, but the room felt the electricity. Lily recalls feeling her stomach tighten. "It was a warning," she said. A message that this set was going to operate on her terms, not collaboratively. And that message, she realized, would define the rest of the shoot. Emotions ran high. Fear, frustration, disbelief, they all coexisted. Some cast members tried humor, attempting to lighten the mood. Others remained silent, observing, calculating. Even small incidents, like a misplaced prop or a technical hiccup, became opportunities for Meghan to assert dominance. It was a lesson in subtlety and control, one that left everyone questioning how far they could push back without risking conflict. And yet, it wasn't just about individual interactions. The first day set the tone for patterns that would continue throughout filming. Minor conflicts escalated quickly, and a culture of caution, observation, and apprehension took hold. People who were used to collaboration found themselves negotiating every move. Scenes that should have flowed naturally became tense exercises in diplomacy. Everyone was waiting for the next disruption, and it came sooner than anyone anticipated. By the end of the day, the crew and cast were exhausted. The director convened a short meeting, trying to restore order, but the tension lingered. Notes were passed quietly. Emails were sent cautiously. And the whispers, once subtle, became more urgent. "She's impossible," someone muttered in the break room. Another voice responded, "This isn't just personality, it's a strategy." What's shocking here, and what Lily Collins emphasizes, is that no one outside the set had any idea. Social media, press releases, interviews, they all showed a picture of harmony, teamwork, and charm. But the reality was more complicated, more volatile. It was a paradox. The public image of Meghan Markle was perfectly aligned with professionalism, while the private reality was fractured with conflict. Now, pause for a moment. Imagine being Lily Collins or any co-star on that set. You're passionate about your craft, excited about a major project, and now you're forced to navigate an unpredictable storm. How do you stay professional while someone around you disrupts the entire rhythm of production? How do you maintain focus when every minor action is scrutinized and every line delivery is potentially criticized? The pressure is intense. And yet, the filming continued. Cameras rolled. Lines were delivered. Scenes were shot. The facade remained intact. But even as day one ended, the sense of foreboding didn't. The cast left the studio with tight jaws, quiet frustration, and a sense of anticipation for what day two might bring. And here's the twist. It wasn't just the cast who was affected. Crew members, often invisible in the public eye, were working under intense stress, juggling schedules, technical adjustments, and emotional turbulence. The human cost of this behavior was significant. People who were usually invisible to the public were quietly paying the price. And then there was Lily's reflection. She later admitted that by the end of that first day, the room felt like a battlefield. It wasn't a war of guns or knives, but a war of energy, control, and influence. The entire set was operating under a delicate balance, one misstep away from a full-blown confrontation. So what happens next? How does a team navigate the days that follow when the first day has already set a tone of tension and fear? How do relationships evolve, alliances form, and conflicts escalate? Those are the questions that drive the rest of this story, and they begin with the very next scene, one that would further test the patience, professionalism, and resilience of every single person on set. But just when the cast thought they had survived day one, an incident occurred during a seemingly routine scene, a moment so minor, yet so symbolic, that it would foreshadow chaos in ways no one could have anticipated. Have you ever been on a team where it feels like no one is safe from tension? That was exactly the case on the close personal friend set. By day two, the early warning signs from day one had become an unspoken rule. No interaction with Meghan Markle came without risk. And when a star of her magnitude enters the room, it's not just about her. It's about how she makes everyone else feel under the weight of her presence. The day began quietly. Cast members tried to settle into routine, rehearsing lines, adjusting props, and bracing for the energy that had already defined the first day. But no one could anticipate just how far the conflict would ripple, touching nearly every corner of the set. Lily Collins, in interviews and private conversations, described it like walking on a tightrope over a pit of sharp blades. Every word had to be measured, every gesture scrutinized. A minor misstep could provoke tension, ridicule, or a cold shoulder that lasted hours. And while Lily herself maintained professionalism, it became clear that many co-stars were struggling. One co-star, a veteran actor known for being unflappable, reportedly had their confidence shaken in less than 30 minutes. A line read that would normally receive constructive feedback was instead met with sharp criticism, accompanied by a dismissive gesture that left the actor frozen mid-performance. Crew members later said they had never seen this individual hesitate before, but that day was different. The unspoken message was clear: adapt to her way, or suffer the consequences. It wasn't limited to acting choices either. Seating arrangements, script revisions, and even casual conversations became arenas for subtle power plays. Someone would suggest a change in scene timing, and Meghan allegedly dismissed it outright. Or worse, turn it into a pointed comment about that person's professionalism. On the surface, these incidents appeared trivial, but the emotional toll was immense. The psychological pressure on the cast created a tense atmosphere that rippled through every scene. And the irony was brutal. On camera, Meghan's performances were polished and flawless. The public saw charm, grace, and charisma, while behind closed doors, her behavior reportedly alienated nearly everyone. It's a stark contradiction. Someone capable of delivering captivating scenes could simultaneously create an environment of unease. It raises a question to anyone watching this story. How much of what we see in public is real, and how much is carefully curated? One scene in particular became emblematic of the tensions. It involved a complex emotional sequence with multiple actors. According to insider accounts, the scene required vulnerability, improvisation, and collaboration. But Meghan allegedly refused to engage with the co-stars naturally, instead asserting her interpretation at every turn. Suggestions from other actors were dismissed. Lines were repeated or altered abruptly. Even minor adjustments led to silent glares or curt remarks. By the time the director called cut, the room was tense, quiet, and exhausted. The crew, observing the drama unfold, reportedly felt trapped between their professional obligations and the emotional turbulence Meghan was causing. Makeup artists, costume designers, and assistant directors, people who usually work in the background, found themselves caught in the crossfire. When props weren't perfectly aligned with Meghan's vision, whispers escalated into private confrontations. Yet publicly, everything remained calm and professional. Lily Collins witnessed these dynamics firsthand. She described moments when co-stars tried to address concerns privately, only to be shut down or dismissed with a carefully polite, yet sharp, comment. It's like navigating a maze with invisible walls, she reportedly said. You can see the exit, but every move toward it is blocked by tension you can't always name. Some actors attempted humor as a coping mechanism. Light jokes, playful banter, even friendly teasing were met with neutral expressions or subtle disapproval. The message was clear. Any form of levity or deviation from her preferred tone was unacceptable. Crew members later admitted that by the middle of the week, small teams had formed, some to avoid Meghan entirely, others to quietly document incidents in case they were needed later. And it wasn't just about minor disagreements. Multiple sources suggest that Meghan allegedly created rivalries among co-stars, whether intentionally or not. A simple comment about a scene's interpretation could lead to tension between actors. Friendly interactions were scrutinized. Alliances shifted. No one knew who might be in favor or whose suggestions might provoke friction next. Here's where it gets even more complicated. The production schedule didn't allow for avoidance. Scenes required close collaboration, sometimes hours of dialogue and shared emotional space. There was no escaping proximity to someone who could transform ordinary interactions into tense confrontations. For Lily and other co-stars, the challenge wasn't just performing. It was performing while navigating a minefield of emotional volatility. The contradictions became almost surreal. Off camera, people whispered about her behavior. Emails circulated discreetly among assistant directors and production staff detailing incidents. Yet on camera, Meghan was flawless, charming, and professional in public-facing takes. It created a sense of cognitive dissonance for the cast and crew. How could someone be so polished and yet so disruptive? The psychological strain was palpable. As days passed, the pattern solidified. Minor disagreements evolved into subtle campaigns to assert dominance. Requests for adjustments, whether about wardrobe, props, or dialogue, were often met with curt refusals or dismissive gestures. Co-stars reportedly began anticipating these confrontations, preparing mentally for tension that seemed inevitable. The emotional roller coaster became exhausting, even for those accustomed to Hollywood drama. One co-star, in private, described it as trying to act while constantly walking on eggshells, never knowing which step might trigger a reaction. The emotional labor involved wasn't just about acting. It was about survival in a professional environment dominated by someone with immense influence and a public persona that demanded perfection. Crew members corroborated this, noting that the tension affected not only performances but also technical aspects of the shoot. And yet, there were moments of stark contrast. During breaks, some actors whispered relief to one another, shared frustration, and even humor in dark, ironic ways. "Can you believe this?" one whispered. "She's flawless on camera, but off it, it's a circus." These private moments became vital for maintaining morale. They were the quiet rebellion against an environment charged with subtle intimidation. It's also important to note that this was not about simple personality clashes. Multiple insiders suggest there were deliberate actions designed to control the set, shape narratives, and assert influence. Requests for changes in dialogue, creative direction, or blocking weren't always collaborative. They were reportedly exercises in authority, ensuring that Meghan's vision dominated every interaction. Lily Collins, observing all of this, reportedly felt torn between her professionalism and the need to speak up. How do you maintain composure when a peer is actively disrupting collaboration? How do you protect your own mental and emotional health while remaining committed to the craft? She describes navigating a delicate balance, trying to assert boundaries while avoiding direct conflict, all while performing at the highest level. So, what happens when conflicts escalate beyond whispered complaints and subtle power plays? How does a set survive when one individual's behavior affects every interaction, every scene, and every emotion? The answer begins with the next series of incidents, a chain of events involving heated confrontations, private disputes, and moments that would leave everyone questioning the line between professionalism and personal attack. And just when the cast thought they had adapted to the tension, a seemingly minor incident during a group rehearsal would ignite a conflict that no one expected. A confrontation that would leave crew members stunned and foreshadow further turmoil in ways the cameras would never capture. What happens when even the most experienced director feels powerless? That was the reality on the close personal friends set. By day 3, it wasn't just the cast who felt the weight of Meghan Markle's presence. It was the entire leadership team, the people tasked with keeping production on schedule, keeping actors performing at their best, and keeping a multi-million-dollar project from collapsing. The director, a seasoned professional known for balancing egos and orchestrating complex scenes, quickly realized that this would be no ordinary shoot. On a normal day, disagreements with actors could be managed with gentle guidance or minor adjustments. Not this time. Meghan's behavior, according to insiders, didn't just challenge individual actors, it disrupted the rhythm of the set itself. Every decision, every line read, every camera angle became a potential source of tension. It started with small things: late arrivals, requests for retakes that weren't necessary, and a subtle but unmistakable insistence that scenes be done her way. At first, the director tried to absorb these as minor disruptions, assuming they would smooth out once the team settled in. But the pattern quickly became clear. Nothing on this set would operate normally without Meghan's implicit approval. By the afternoon of that third day, a routine scene became a full-blown standoff. The scene required multiple actors to interact in close quarters. Camera angles were rehearsed, dialogue was timed, and props were in place. But Meghan, according to multiple accounts, refused to engage naturally. She paused, altered lines mid-scene, and made subtle corrections that left other actors confused and the director scrambling to regain control. What makes this particularly striking is how calculated some of her moves appeared. Crew members noted that it wasn't just about demanding perfection, it was about asserting dominance. When an actor hesitated, Meghan would reportedly smile politely, but the eyes conveyed disapproval. When the director suggested an adjustment, her response was measured, calm, but firm. "I don't think that works. Let's try it my way." The subtlety of it made confrontation tricky. No one could accuse her of being unprofessional outright, yet her influence was undeniable. The emotional impact on the director was profound. Months of planning, meticulous storyboarding, and scene rehearsals were suddenly overshadowed by the need to constantly mediate tension. Assistant directors, production managers, and even cinematographers found themselves walking on eggshells. Technical aspects, lighting, camera placement, sound, were delayed because no one wanted to risk a comment or adjustment that might provoke a reaction. The director tried several strategies. First, they attempted private discussions with Meghan to clarify expectations and boundaries. According to insiders, these meetings were calm on the surface, but the power dynamics remained skewed. Meghan would agree, nod, and even smile. But the behavior reportedly persisted, subtly undermining collaborative efforts and keeping everyone in a heightened state of alert. Then came the attempts to build alliances with co-stars. The director encouraged group rehearsals, tried pairing Meghan with different actors, and sought to foster a sense of camaraderie. But what should have been simple collaborative exercises became exercises in patience, negotiation, and risk assessment. Each pairing carried the potential for tension, and every interaction had to be carefully orchestrated. One of the most telling incidents happened during a critical scene that involved a high emotional stakes exchange between Lily Collins and Meghan. The scene required vulnerability, timing, and trust. According to crew members, Meghan refused to make eye contact consistently, interrupted lines subtly, and adjusted timing in ways that disoriented co-stars. The director tried to intervene gently, suggesting a different approach to the scene. Meghan politely declined, insisting on her interpretation. The tension in the room was so thick that even minor technical adjustments felt monumental. Crew members recalled a quiet panic. Equipment operators were waiting for cues that were delayed, makeup touch-ups were postponed, and every department felt the ripple effect. Normally, a set functions like a well-oiled machine. Every movement, every adjustment is synchronized. Here, the rhythm had been disrupted. The flow was broken. And the director, usually in complete control, found themselves reacting constantly rather than leading proactively. Emotional spikes were frequent. One moment, actors would share a private joke or exchange a reassuring glance. The next, a subtle critique from Meghan or a pause in line delivery would send tension back through the room. Crew members began reporting that the emotional labor of the shoot was as taxing as the physical work. They were not just managing props, cameras, and lights. They were managing people, moods, and a delicate psychological ecosystem. And then came a revelation that stunned even the most experienced staff. Meghan's influence extended beyond interpersonal dynamics. Her preferences, opinions, and micro-decisions were subtly altering the creative direction of the film. A scene originally scripted with a certain emotional tone was reshaped to reflect her interpretation. Even cinematographers, trained to focus on technical precision, noticed shifts in lighting and framing that seemed designed to accommodate one person's aesthetic vision. At the same time, the director had to balance public perception. Nothing could leak. Social media, press, and promotional schedules were tightly controlled. Any hint of conflict could generate headlines that might overshadow the film itself. So even when the tension reached a boiling point, the director and crew maintained composure in front of cameras, ensuring that every take was polished and ready for the public eye. It was a delicate, exhausting dance. Some of the most surprising aspects of this chaos were the moments of subtle manipulation. Crew members reported that Meghan would often insert small, almost imperceptible changes, timing of dialogue, slight gestures, even pauses in movement, that created an ongoing sense of uncertainty. Actors would adjust, trying to anticipate these nuances, but the unpredictability remained. It was a psychological chess game, with everyone else constantly playing catch-up. And yet, despite the challenges, some moments of brilliance emerged. The tension sometimes resulted in performances that were raw, authentic, and electric. Cameras captured emotion that might not have been achieved without the underlying stress. But these sparks were fleeting, and the cost to morale was high. Every moment of brilliance was offset by hours of negotiation, correction, and subtle conflict management. The director, in private, reportedly described the experience as walking a tightrope over a pit of unpredictability. There were moments of exhilaration, seeing a scene come together perfectly, but they were always shadowed by the looming uncertainty of the next disruption. No one on set could relax completely. Every decision carried weight, every word could provoke tension, and every interaction had to be calculated. So, what does it take to maintain control in an environment like this? According to insiders, it took a combination of diplomacy, patience, strategic intervention, and, at times, quiet endurance. The director became a mediator, psychologist, and negotiator, all while maintaining creative integrity. But even with experience and skill, the unpredictability of one person's behavior created a level of stress rarely seen on a set. And just when it seemed the director had found a rhythm, an incident occurred during a pivotal afternoon scene. A disagreement over how a line should be delivered. Voices were low, but tension spiked instantly. Crew members reportedly held their breath. Actors hesitated mid-action, and the director realized that they might be powerless to prevent the escalating conflict. This was a turning point. It became clear that controlling the chaos wasn't just about managing technical aspects or directing actors. It was about navigating emotional minefields, predicting human behavior, and trying to preserve the integrity of the production under impossible pressure. And even then, there was no guarantee of success. But what came next would test not only the director's patience, but the resilience of every single person on set, and it would reveal cracks in the carefully constructed facade that no one expected. Have you ever wondered what it's like to witness chaos up close while still trying to maintain professionalism? That's exactly what Lily Collins faced on the close Personal Friends set. By the time filming had reached its third week, she was no longer just a co-star. She had become a frontline observer of behavior that, according to insiders, few had ever seen in Hollywood before. It began quietly. Lily, known for her calm and measured demeanor, initially tried to absorb the tension, focus on her performance, and maintain composure. She had walked onto countless sets, dealt with difficult co-stars, navigated high-pressure productions. But this was different. Every day brought new challenges, subtle manipulations, and moments of unpredictability that left even seasoned actors second-guessing their instincts. According to Lily, the most shocking part was how invisible the chaos seemed to the outside world. Cameras rolled, social media posts went live, press interviews were conducted, and everything looked polished, rehearsed, and flawless. But behind closed doors, the reality was vastly different. She described scenes where actors were hesitant to speak, afraid that any small disagreement or unintentional mistake would spark criticism or subtle retaliation. It was exhausting, she admitted. You felt like you were performing in a minefield. Every step, every glance, every line could trigger tension. One early morning, Lily recalled arriving on set to find Meghan Markle already in place, calmly reviewing lines while the rest of the cast assembled. On the surface, it seemed professional, almost serene. But when Lily attempted a friendly greeting, she noticed a slight hesitation in Meghan's response. A half-smile, a tilt of the head, a subtle pause that felt like a test rather than a conversation. That tiny moment set the tone for the entire day. As filming progressed, it became clear that Meghan's interactions were rarely spontaneous. Every comment, every suggestion, and even every silence seemed calculated. Crew members reported instances where props had to be adjusted multiple times to suit her preferences. Lines were repeated not for technical reasons, but because she wanted delivery in a specific tone, and minor costume details became sources of tension. These actions, while seemingly small, compounded to create a pervasive sense of unease. Lily noticed patterns emerging. Co-stars who had initially been eager to collaborate found themselves walking on eggshells. Even minor creative disagreements escalated quickly. Suggestions that would normally be welcomed were dismissed, subtly undermined, or met with curt comments that left the recipient questioning their own judgment. The psychological strain was enormous. It wasn't just about acting, Lily explained. It was about constantly navigating someone else's expectations and moods. You couldn't relax. You couldn't just be in the scene. Every move had to be calculated. And yet, despite the tension, Lily maintained her professionalism. She understood the importance of keeping the project on track, delivering strong performances, and avoiding public conflict. But in private, she began documenting moments, quietly observing patterns, and reflecting on the implications. What she witnessed wasn't just diva behavior. It was a disruption that affected everyone on set, from the lead actors to the technical crew. One particularly revealing incident involved a complex scene with multiple co-stars. The scene required vulnerability, emotional intensity, and trust. According to Lily, Meghan disrupted the flow by pausing lines, inserting unsolicited suggestions, and subtly altering cues. The cast struggled to adapt, and the director found themselves mediating every few minutes. Lily described the atmosphere as tense, fragile, and constantly shifting. where no one could predict the next disruption. What makes Lily's perspective so compelling is the duality she observed. Meghan was flawless on camera, delivering every scene with polish and charisma, yet off camera, her behavior created a ripple effect of anxiety, doubt, and tension. Crew members described feeling constantly on edge, adjusting technical aspects preemptively to avoid potential complaints or corrections. Lines were repeated, props repositioned, and blocking adjusted, not for the sake of the production, but to accommodate a single individual's preferences. Lily also revealed the emotional toll this took on the cast. Some actors became withdrawn, others defensive. Friendly interactions were minimized, humor became rare, and private moments of camaraderie were shadowed by the anticipation of conflict. The psychological environment of the set became as important to manage as the physical production itself. You learn to read micro-expressions, subtle shifts in tone, and pauses, Lily said. It was survival as much as performance. And yet, despite these challenges, there were moments that highlighted the resilience of the cast and crew. Lily herself found ways to maintain professionalism, support her colleagues, and navigate the tension without letting it affect her performance. She described informal check-ins with fellow actors, quiet moments of reassurance, and using humor as a coping mechanism. But these moments were temporary reprieves in an environment dominated by unpredictability. The most revealing aspect, according to Lily, was how the dynamic affected collaboration. Scenes that should have been fluid and interactive became exercises in patience and negotiation. Every suggestion, every improvisation, every emotional beat had to be carefully considered. Actors found themselves performing not just for the cameras, but also within a complex web of interpersonal tension, constantly assessing the reactions of one unpredictable co-star. Then came the tipping point. During one pivotal scene, a minor disagreement over line delivery escalated into a silent standoff. Crew members observed Meghan subtly shifting her position, casting looks that conveyed disapproval without words, while Lily and others tried to maintain focus. The scene was completed, technically flawless, but the emotional toll was significant. Lily later admitted that she felt drained, anxious, and acutely aware of the psychological complexity of the set environment. This is where Lily's voice becomes critical. She spoke not to sensationalize, but to illuminate the human impact of working under such intense pressure. The constant negotiation of mood, expectation, and interpersonal tension created a unique environment, one where every individual had to balance their professional responsibilities with the psychological demands of navigating conflict. And yet, the public image remained untarnished. Every promotional event, every press release, every social media post portrayed harmony, collaboration, and professionalism. What Lily revealed is that the reality behind closed doors was starkly different, a controlled, calculated tension that challenged every member of the cast and crew. As filming progressed, Lily began to notice more subtle manipulations. Scenes were occasionally reordered, dialogue adjusted, and interactions staged to highlight certain performances while minimizing others. The cumulative effect was disorienting. Actors who might have excelled in a collaborative environment found themselves second-guessing choices, adapting constantly, and navigating complex social dynamics on top of their performances. And yet, despite the challenges, Lily observed moments of brilliance. The tension sometimes fueled performances that were raw, authentic, and emotionally charged. But these moments were fleeting, punctuated by interruptions, corrections, and subtle power plays that reminded everyone who truly controlled the environment. By the end of her time on set, Lily had compiled an internal account of what she had witnessed, an intricate picture of a star whose public persona was polished and charismatic, yet whose private behavior created constant stress, tension, and unpredictability. Her revelations would later shock audiences, revealing that the behind-the-scenes reality of working with Meghan Markle on this high-profile set was far more complex and emotionally taxing than anyone had imagined. And just when it seemed Lily had seen it all, an incident occurred during a late-night shoot that no one anticipated. A moment so small on the surface yet so revealing in context, it would set off a chain of events that would leave the entire cast questioning their roles, their patience, and their understanding of professionalism. Have you ever been in a room where it feels like every decision is being quietly contested, where authority isn't just about titles, but about influence, subtlety, and presence. That was the atmosphere on the close personal friends set by the time the second week of filming rolled around. What began as tension between co-stars had escalated into a full-blown power struggle, and everyone, from the cast to the crew, felt the weight of it. From the outset, the hierarchy of a film set is clear. Directors lead, producers oversee, actors perform, and crew members execute. But when someone like Meghan Markle enters, someone whose public profile carries the weight of royalty, Hollywood fame, and global scrutiny, the traditional hierarchy becomes fluid, almost fragile. Decisions that would normally flow from the director or producers were subtly, and sometimes overtly, influenced by her presence. Every suggestion, adjustment, or correction seemed filtered through the lens of her expectations. The first sign of a brewing power struggle appeared during a morning rehearsal. A scene involving multiple lead actors required collaborative input on blocking and emotional timing. The director offered a suggestion, one designed to highlight an emotional arc that had been meticulously crafted. Meghan, according to multiple insiders, rejected it outright. Not with hostility, but with a calm, measured insistence that her interpretation was better suited. Her tone left little room for negotiation. Her insistence left no ambiguity about her influence. And it wasn't just her insistence, it was the ripple effect. Other actors began second-guessing themselves, unsure whether to follow the director's guidance or anticipate Meghan's expectations. Crew members adjusted camera angles, lighting setups, and sound cues preemptively, worried that even minor deviations might trigger criticism. The subtle, pervasive pressure created an environment where every action had consequences and every decision required careful calculation. Lily Collins observed these dynamics with acute awareness. She later described the tension as an invisible force pressing down on the set. It wasn't just about lines or scenes, she said. It was about who had control, whose vision would dominate, and who would quietly bend to someone else's interpretation. It was exhausting because every decision became political. The power struggle wasn't limited to creative choices. Scheduling became a battleground. According to insiders, delays that might have been minor in any other production were magnified because of Meghan's preferences. Certain scenes had to be shot at specific times. Others had to be postponed to accommodate her availability or mood. The production team had to juggle not just technical logistics, but emotional calculations, anticipating potential disruptions and planning contingencies for a star whose influence could reshape the schedule in an instant. Even small interactions carried weight. When actors attempted friendly banter, Meghan allegedly inserted comments that subtly asserted dominance, reminding others of her priorities and vision. Crew members described moments when casual suggestions about wardrobe, props, or dialogue were dismissed or overruled, not necessarily because they were wrong, but because she had already decided how she wanted things to unfold. This created a culture of caution, where even minor contributions were weighed carefully to avoid conflict. What's remarkable is how these dynamics impacted collaboration. On a film set, trust and cooperation are critical. Actors rely on one another to deliver authentic performances. Directors rely on actors and crew to execute complex plans. But with a looming power struggle, trust becomes fragile. Lily noted that co-stars were constantly assessing not just what to do in a scene, but how Meghan might respond. Every gesture, every pause, every improvised line was calculated against the likelihood of approval or subtle disapproval. The creative process became secondary to managing influence. One notable incident involved a pivotal emotional scene between Lily and another co-star. The director suggested a slight adjustment to heighten the tension and authenticity of the moment. Meghan, however, interjected with a recommendation that altered the delivery entirely. The co-star attempted to follow the director's guidance, only to be met with a polite but firm correction. Crew members watched as the scene unfolded, noting the subtle shifts, the tension in facial expressions, the micro-adjustments in movement, the careful navigation of timing. The emotional labor required to maintain composure while under such scrutiny was enormous. What made the situation even more complicated was Meghan's ability to influence others without overt confrontation. She would offer suggestions that appeared collaborative, then subtly reframe them in a way that elevated her perspective. directors and producers found themselves negotiating not just for creative integrity, but for the emotional stability of the cast. Every adjustment had to account for the unpredictable variable of her presence, turning even simple tasks into complex, multi-layered negotiations. Lily Collins' reflections provide a window into the human side of this struggle. She described moments when she had to navigate conversations delicately, balancing honesty with tact, professionalism with empathy. She spoke about feeling torn between supporting fellow actors and managing interactions with someone whose influence dominated the set. The strain was cumulative, creating emotional fatigue, heightened anxiety, and a sense of constant vigilance. And yet, there were moments of resilience. Some actors quietly asserted themselves, delivering performances that reflected their interpretation while attempting to anticipate Meghan's responses. Crew members developed unspoken strategies to manage tension, coordinate subtly behind the scenes, and maintain technical precision even under stress. These efforts created pockets of stability amidst the broader chaos, but they were fragile, constantly threatened by shifts in mood, perception, or interpretation. The director, recognizing the escalating power struggle, attempted structured interventions. Meetings were held to clarify expectations, establish boundaries, and reinforce the collaborative nature of the project. But even these efforts were complicated by Meghan's public persona. Every interaction carried weight beyond the set, every disagreement risked potential media scrutiny, and every decision had to account for her influence on both the creative and social dimensions of the production. A particularly revealing example occurred during a scene that required synchronized interaction among the main cast. The director suggested an adjustment in movement to enhance visual impact. Meghan's reaction was measured, calm, and polite, but firm. Her subtle resistance shifted the entire dynamic, leaving co-stars and crew questioning their own choices. In that moment, it became clear the power struggle was no longer theoretical. It was tangible, pervasive, and affecting every aspect of production. And yet, the paradox persisted. Meghan's performance on camera remained flawless. The public saw charm, precision, and charisma. Behind the scenes, she exerted influence in ways that were subtle, strategic, and emotionally taxing for everyone involved. The contrast created a surreal environment: perfection in public, chaos in private. By the middle of the week, patterns were well established. Minor disagreements escalated into larger conflicts. Subtle corrections became demonstrations of authority. The emotional energy required to maintain professionalism was exhausting, even for seasoned actors. And while the director worked tirelessly to mediate, they realized that some dynamics could not be controlled, they could only be managed. So, the question arises, who truly called the shots on this set? Was it the director, responsible for the vision and execution of the film? The producers, tasked with logistics, budget, and schedule? Or was it Meghan Markle, whose influence, presence, and subtle maneuvers reshaped interactions, decisions, and emotional energy throughout the production? The answer, according to those on set, was a complicated combination, but it was increasingly clear that she held a disproportionate amount of power, influencing not just performances, but relationships, morale, and the very rhythm of production itself. And just when it seemed that the power dynamics had reached a plateau, an unexpected incident during a late-night shoot would ignite tension in ways nobody anticipated. A miscommunication over a line delivery escalated into a silent but tense standoff, forcing the director to make a difficult choice: intervene directly and risk confrontation, or allow the scene to unfold under pressure, knowing it might compromise both performance and morale. The stage was set for escalation, and no one on the close personal friends set would leave that night untouched by the evolving drama. Have you ever watched a perfect public persona crumble, piece by piece, behind the scenes, and wondered how long it could stay hidden? That question hung over the close personal friends set like a storm cloud as the crew and cast navigated not just Meghan Markle's influence, but the growing social media scrutiny that began leaking into their daily lives. By this point, word of on-set tension had started seeping out. It was as if the world itself was stepping into the set, weighing in on dynamics that insiders had been quietly managing for weeks. The director, while focused on production, couldn't escape the implications of this online storm. Every decision, Every line of dialogue, every promotional image could be scrutinized, analyzed, and dissected in real time. Crew members began noting subtle changes in behavior. Co-stars adjusting their interactions, appearing more guarded on camera, and carefully calibrating social media posts to avoid fueling speculation. Even minor slips, a delayed response to a text, a misaligned scene angle, became fodder for online chatter. Lily noticed a psychological pattern emerging. The dual pressure of on-set behavior and public perception created a unique stress environment. Actors and crew were not just performing. They were managing impressions, anticipating leaks, and thinking strategically about how every action might be interpreted. Social media amplified every nuance, turning private tension into public debate almost instantly. And then came the most surprising twist. Fan speculation began to influence the production itself. Directors and producers noticed subtle shifts in expectations. Scenes were reconsidered, promotional angles were recalibrated, and even script nuances were debated, all in response to online perception. According to insiders, the cast began to feel as though they were performing for two audiences simultaneously: the cameras and the court of public opinion. Lily Collins later reflected on how surreal this experience was. You're on a set, performing, trying to tell a story, and then you log on to social media and see narratives forming that you had no control over, she said. It's exhausting and surreal. You're living in two realities at once. The polarizing online reaction had tangible effects. Some co-stars reported feeling pressured to conform, to anticipate not just Meghan's expectations, but fan expectations as well. Crew members found themselves mediating subtle conflicts, not only for the sake of the film, but to protect reputations in a highly visible, scrutinized environment. It became a constant balancing act, managing interpersonal tension while navigating the unpredictable force of social media. Humor and irony emerged in unexpected ways. Some cast members noted how the world could simultaneously praise a performance while criticizing minor quirks, missing entirely the complex human dynamics behind the scenes. A playful misstep in a scene might be dissected endlessly online, while moments of true collaborative brilliance went unnoticed. The crew learned to navigate the absurdity with silent resilience, small gestures of humor, and private solidarity. And yet, the stakes were high. Social media had the power to amplify conflict, influence perception, and shape public narratives in ways that could affect careers, reputations, and the trajectory of the film itself. A single leak, a single anecdote, could spiral out of control. Lily Collins, aware of this, reportedly began documenting incidents discreetly, not just as personal reflection, but as a record of what was happening on a set under extraordinary pressure. The tension wasn't confined to online forums. Leaked stories began circulating in trade publications, fueled by anonymous tips from crew members and secondary sources. Headlines hinted at diva behavior, on-set drama, and celebrity clashes. Fans debated fiercely, some defending Meghan with near-religious fervor, others condemning the alleged behavior with equal intensity. Every scene shot became scrutinized retrospectively, and the online narrative grew faster than anyone could control. One incident highlighted the surreal impact of social media on production. A seemingly minor disagreement over line delivery, brief, private, and quickly resolved on set, was reported anonymously online. Within hours, discussion threads exploded, analyzing the incident frame by frame. Memes, commentary, and speculation flooded feeds. Co-stars found themselves navigating the emotional fallout, aware that even minor on-set tensions could generate disproportionate online reaction. What makes this period so fascinating and stressful is how the dual pressures of private conflict and public scrutiny reinforced one another. The more tension there was on set, the more fuel there was for social media speculation. The more speculation circulated, the more cautious, tense, and strategic the cast and crew had to become. It was a feedback loop. Every disruption magnified online. Every online discussion influenced the atmosphere on set. Lily Collins, observing all of this, later explained that it was a psychological minefield. You have to act, respond, and perform while everyone is watching, and not just in the room, but around the world, she said. It's a level of pressure that most people can't imagine, and it magnifies every interpersonal conflict. Even seasoned crew members were affected. Directors, producers, and assistants constantly recalibrated schedules, blocking, and dialogue based not only on creative judgment, but on anticipation of social media reaction. Email threads became longer, meetings became more frequent, and minor decisions were overanalyzed to prevent leaks or misinterpretation. The digital age had transformed the set into both a workplace and a stage under constant global observation. And yet, the most critical element was still the power struggle with Meghan herself. The public scrutiny amplified the control she wielded. Every minor decision, every line adjustment, every subtle gesture was potentially amplified online, reinforcing her influence and heightening tension among co-stars. Lily noted that actors began rehearsing not just for the scene, but for the narrative that might emerge if anything leaked. As the week progressed, the dual pressures began to create emotional fractures. Co-stars reported fatigue, anxiety, and frustration. Crew members struggled to maintain technical precision while managing emotional energy. Even brief moments of levity were shadowed by the anticipation of online commentary or unseen criticism. The set became a complex ecosystem where psychological strategy, social media perception, and creative performance were intertwined in ways few had anticipated. And just when it seemed the cast and crew had adapted to this dual reality, a leaked anecdote hit social media that no one on set expected. What started as a quiet observation from an anonymous source exploded online, sparking debates, viral discussions, and public outrage. Suddenly, the story of on-set tension was no longer private. It had become a spectacle, forcing every actor, crew member, and production leader to confront the real-world consequences of their work environment. The question now hung in the air. How would this public attention affect the ongoing production? Could the cast and crew maintain composure under the combined weight of interpersonal tension and viral scrutiny? And more importantly, how would Meghan respond to a world that was suddenly watching her every move, analyzing her behavior, and debating her influence? What came next would challenge not only their ability to work together, but also the fragile facade of perfection that the public had come to expect. And no one on set or online was prepared for the next twist.